What is up, guys, and welcome to what is the final episode of Project Boro for the 24-25 season. And as promised, we're finishing it in the only way possible, the best way possible. And that is once again Chris joining me here on the channel. And we are going to attempt to have a deep dive review into Boro's season. We're going to talk about the season as a whole. We're going to talk about Michael Carrick and how we feel about his position and where we think that's going to go into the next season, into the summer. We'll talk about other factors that potentially have gone wrong this season, including the recruitment, players who've come in, players who've gone. Of course, January is a big part of that, as well as another season of injuries. And we'll finish, as I say, by looking ahead at what we think is going to happen versus what we would like to happen heading into next season. Now, before I cue you in, Chris, I'm going to just reel off a few facts summing up Boro's season. So, Boro did not finish in the playoffs as hoped and expected. We finished 10th in the championship, winning 18 games, drawing 10 and losing as many games as we won, being 18. We scored 64 goals but conceded 56 with a +8 goal difference, finishing on 64 points. The best run of results we strung was a 3-game winning run once in November. We never matched that again all season, and I think we only won back-to-back games 3 other times throughout the whole campaign. And we also finished with an identical win-draw-loss record as to what we did in 2021 under Neil Warnock, to which that season I think we finished around 9-10 plus points off the playoffs. So it's safe to say, and we've done predictions, we've mentioned it a lot throughout the podcast we've done, anything less than playoffs we counted as a failure. But Boro finished 10th below a number of other sides that I don't think we should have. So let's dig deep into Boro's season, Chris, and just start me off with your just overall thoughts coming away from Boro's campaign as a whole.
I've never known a season as emotionally draining as this one. I know people have said online, this is the most disappointing or the worst season we've had in years, and people have argued backwards and forwards whether, the Pulis season was worse, the Strachan years were worse, the Woodgate season, but I don't necessarily disagree that those years, in terms of the football we watched, were worse. But I literally I cannot recall a season that is just drained and sucked the life out of me than this one. It was just the constant hope and the constant false dawns and false promises. The number of times we've been gift wrapped and put on our laps the chance to get in the top 6, only to then just show up with looking lifeless and uninterested and throwing it away time and time and time again. And when you think it's over, they give you another chance. And we do the same again. Eventually the hope just drains out of you, and you just become you can just become immune to it. Then it's like being stood up for a day every Saturday and then still ironing your shirt the following week. There's only so many times you can put yourself through it. Yeah. It's a season that I'm personally very much glad to see the back of, and one that, other than the 3-game run we had before Christmas, we played QPR, Luton, and Oxford. There's no highlights of the season to look back on. At least last season, you could say we had a cup run. We beat Chelsea. We had some excitement there. It looked like last season we were moving on to potentially bigger and better things. This season, there's no positives whatsoever. And you can't even say that we've built the foundations for next season, because half this team won't be here next season. So very disappointing overall.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. There was a lot of differing emotions after the Coventry game. I know a lot of people were very angry. A lot of people were very frustrated. A lot of people were very down, and I honestly just felt relief. I felt relief, and me and you have said, I think some have said even as far back as when the fixtures dropped last June, but it just felt, regardless of how far back Coventry were, how many games they fluffed, we fluffed, the run they went on, etc. It was always going to come down to that final day, and it tells you how predictable Boro are in the worst way, that we went into the final game of the season with not the most improbable of tasks. You know, Millwall and Burnley had to win, but they were going to very tough opposition, 2 teams in the top 3 who were head and shoulders above everyone else. Boro just had to win a one-off game. It wasn't as much as our record at Coventry is poor and they're a hoodoo team and everything. It was not beyond the realms of possibility. And yet we all went into that final game resigned to the outcome, to the fact that we were never going to win. We were never going to make the playoffs. We never deserved to make the playoffs. And I think that's the fact that maybe is sparing the blushes of this season a little bit, that it went so close in the end, because as we've said, any other season, we'd have been nowhere near. I can't recall whether a team's got in on 65 points. I mentioned it a couple of podcasts ago, but I think 67 might be around the lowest ever for a team to get in. I think it's happened twice. And Boro couldn't even muster that. You know, we finished on 64 points. And once again, me and you were too positive, it seems.
Story of the season, wasn't it?
Story of the season. Every single podcast we've done, we've predicted the next block of games, and we've always tried to say, all right, this is how, because we're realists, we've put a realistic number, and we've added a little point or two just to be a bit more optimistic, and we've always just been tracking too far ahead of Boro. I predicted us in them final 8 games to get 12 points. You predicted 13. Your tally would have had us finishing on 67, mine on 66. And again, as they have done all season, Boro tracked just below that on 64. But how damaging were them final couple of games? Because you mention it, Norwich, if we'd have beat them, and Sheffield Wednesday, we'd have been done. It'd have been party time at the CBS. But again, gaping opportunities, especially in that run-in, that we just failed to take time and time again.
Yeah, after the Oxford and the Blackburn games, there were people kind of like, oh, what hotels is everyone booking for Wembley and everything? And I was like, okay, I'm not going to quite get on that bandwagon yet, but I could see why people get a little bit optimistic after those games. Obviously, the Leeds one, we both predicted defeat in that one, which, and to be fair, we actually played, having weathered the initial early storm, we actually played pretty well second half, if I remember rightly. Just awful finishing, let us down.
Yeah.
And then I was at Millwall the game after that, and it was a bit like I described it. It was just flat, insipid. We had nothing in the final third whatsoever. We're probably going to a bit later. Alex Neil ran the changes at half time, just after half time. We had 4 changes in total. They got the goal. We never looked like scoring. And then we went into the Plymouth game, had a little bit of rub of the green with a penalty at the end, but then you were thinking, right, okay, Sheffield Wednesday away, the manager's basically told the players are not good enough and there'll be a relegation fight next season. And then you've got Norwich City at home, nothing to play for either. You couldn't really have asked for 2 better fixtures, because if you're playing sides at the bottom, they're fighting for their lives, but these 2, not playing for anything. Fans are a bit disenfranchised of how things are going. Couldn't really pick 2 better games.
Norwich sacked the manager, had an interim as well.
And watching both those games, if you asked someone who didn't know either team to tell you which side was fighting for the playoffs and which side had absolutely nothing to play for, in both games, they would have said that the Boro's opposition were the ones fighting for the playoffs, because I just couldn't believe how flat we were. You know, you were thinking results had gone our way, especially the Norwich one. You're thinking Luton Town, a big Coventry, you know, half an hour before kickoff, you're thinking you can't ask for a better lift. You know, the fans are up for it as well. You hear the cheering from the concourses. You know, when Pigback came on, you can see there's a little bit of zest when the players came out. You're thinking, right, okay, players get out there, let's get steaming in, let's, you know, get up for it, let's get that first goal, and let's push on from there. Nothing. There was nothing there. And that's the kind of story of the season. And I know people will say, oh, well, the players aren't good enough, or players this, players that. But the annoying thing was they showed second half at the CBS. They showed that they can show a bit of urgency, and it showed that they can want it when when they want it, but we just haven't had that enough this season at all, and that's been a really frustrating thing, that teams have given us chance after chance after chance to take that top 6 spot, and it's kind of the story of our season, even early season when we were playing well, but conspiring to punch ourselves in the face and beat ourselves. We just found a way second half of the season to do it a different way. That's kind of the story of our season.
Yeah, I found some of the running results. I found Boro's performances very reflective of the manager, really. Very passive, more reactive than proactive. It didn't feel like Boro were the side going out there to take the game by the scruff of the neck, take the initiative, grab that incentive that was often in front of us with two hands. We always almost didn't turn up one way or the other, or waited for the opposition to kick into gear before we realised what we had to do. And Coventry was a bit like that. It was typical of us, really, that it was all too little, too late. But we can have absolutely no complaints. Had we gotten into the playoffs, it would have been a crime against football, to be honest. And we'll get on to Carrick in a bit, but I think if you miss out narrowly to Sunderland and Coventry, you can say, okay, they've both got decent squads that are probably on par in and around Boro's, and you can count yourself frustrated, but you say, okay, some decent teams have beat us to the punch there. But when you look at the table and you look that we finished below Bristol City, who I think have got a manager who's done an outstanding job there, but I still wouldn't say their squad's anywhere near as good or better than ours. Maybe it's closer now than it was.
They were forced to sell their star player to us in the summer because he'd won his contract. Yeah,
fair point. Blackburn Rovers, who were a absolute car crash when we went there a couple of weeks ago and beat them 2-0. There were protests. The manager had lost 4 in a row. They looked like they were in the bottom half, I think, at that point. They've changed their manager numerous times. West Brom changed their manager numerous times. Millwall, a budget that's probably not even a tiny, tiny fraction of what we have. And if you, again, compare the squads and compare the value of squads, I mean, a lot of Millwall's team is full of players that were once at Boro and have been moved on because they're not good enough for us. So regardless of what people may say about, well, Boro's squad, maybe it was a 6th to 8th place team. Maybe it could have been in, might have not been in the playoffs. It was touch and go. For me to finish, outside the playoffs anywhere is a failure, because it's a 46-game season. It's not just played post-January. We saw a lot of these traits pre-January as well, where we threw games away, mismanaged games, made stupid errors. But for me, finishing behind some of them clubs, no disrespect to them, I just find embarrassing. I thought us finishing outside the top 6 was going to be enough of a blow, but to finish 10th behind a lot of them, I can't find an excuse for that. It really is quite damning, isn't it, that we've finished behind them clubs, even with the debate around Boro's squad and how good or not good it is.
It feels strange, doesn't it? Because at our first discussion, we were sort of dubbed the party poopers for saying that this squad wasn't good enough for top 2. We were dubbed miserable, negative, and Debbie Downers and all sorts of stuff. And it seems like from there that, I don't know, realisation for some was set in. Obviously, January didn't help, but me personally, I never thought that this squad was good enough for top 2. My only hope was that we could do what Sunderland did and put pressure on the top 2 for a little bit, but inevitably fall away. But it was clear. It was. I remember putting a tweet out after 10 games, and I stated automatic promotion was done, absolutely done. The furthest any club in the last 5 seasons had been from top 2 after 10 games, and still got automatic promotion was 2 points. We were 7 points behind. I think we won maybe 4 the first 10. If you look at some like Ipswich when they got promoted, I think they won 8 out the first 10. So we were way, way, way behind the standard, and people were, it's too early, you can't be making no. If you look at any historical data, it would have told you that it was done. But I never until the end of the January window, I never thought that we would be outside the playoffs. I always thought that the standard of the league being quite poor, that we would be comfortably fifth, maybe in the play. And I didn't really see many teams to worry about, particularly, Coventry at the end of the table. I think we were 10 points ahead of them when Frank Lampard was appointed. He managed to overturn that plus 5 points. So 15-point swing from Frank Lampard's being appointed, which was crazy.
And even they've had a drop off in recent weeks. They'd lost a good few games, in the lead up to the final day.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'll start the season. If you look at our start season last season, we hadn't won the opening 7 games. But after 10 games this season, we were only 3 points better off than last season. Many of our fans will say, "Oh, it's too early. You're wet in the bed. You can't cut." But you can't consistently give your opponents a head start every season and expect to get in the top 2 playoffs or what have you. And obviously Coventry have done it, but it's difficult. They went and won, a lot of sequence of games, 5 wins in a row, 6 wins in a row, stuff like that. Where I think we've managed 3 wins once this season, have we?
It's the best we achieved, in November.
Just nowhere near good enough in terms of consistency. And you look at last season, the Achilles heel was the home form. If you look at the home table last season, we were 12th with 34 points. This season, the home table, 12th. But this time with 39 points. So we've got 5 points more at home this season. But if you look at it relative to the other teams, positional-wise, there's no improvement. So we haven't addressed the problems from last season. It's the same problem time and time again. The home form's poor. We're racking up too many injuries. We're not flexible enough with our tactics and game management and stuff like that. We're selling players in January, which I'm sure we'll get on to. Lots of problems. Same old.
I remember you mentioning, it might have been the second, or maybe even the first podcast we did this season. You reeled off like 4 or 5 problems that Boro have had consistently that if we were to see them rectified, you could make an excuse for Carrick and say, okay, there's a degree of progression. But home form, as you say, 12th, not good enough. It needs to be top 6 home form. Bristol City's home, they're 4th in the home league table. That's the platform that's helped them get into the top 6. Coventry, 5th in the home league table. Even West Brom is 7th. Blackburn and Millwall are above us in the home league table as well. That's still been a problem. When I get onto Carrick, which we will, defensively is still a big problem. And then there's the build of the team, the makeup of the team. We've only come back to win from behind twice this season, which was both against Oxford. We go behind, we're mostly done. So there's a mental fragility about this team as well. So there's numerous factors that have been concerns for a long time that we've mentioned that are still lingering around with no sign. And we talk about have Boro progressed. Going into sort of, I guess, the conversation around Michael Carrick, and we'll split it off and talk about numerous potential factors as to why the season's gone wrong. But we'll start with the biggest one, the elephant in the room. There's an argument that we've, never mind progressed, we've regressed. I've only looked at sort of the top end stats really, but points-wise, we've regressed season on season. I think we went from 75 points to 69 points to 64 points this season. Goals scored, we've regressed. I think we had 84 in his first season. I know he wasn't around for the full season, but still, goals per game, massive. Ahead of where we are, I think we scored 71 last season, 64 this season. The defence, albeit I think is slightly better, we're still conceding 50 plus upwards of 60 goals, which is never going to get you anywhere near promotion. So, yeah, Michael Carrick, I think it's just a case of getting your opinion out there. Have we regressed? Are we regressing? And where do you stand with the manager right now? Because that is the biggest hot topic amongst Boro supporters.
It's just a matter of fact that we've regressed. 4th, 8th, 10th, 75 points, 69 points, 64 points. It's regression no matter what way you look at it. And like I said, with the home form, no improvement. Like you said, with the defence, no improvement. game management. I'm not seeing any improvement. I'm just not seeing any improvement with this team. And to sort of put it into context, so if you remember last season, we finished 8th, didn't we, outside the playoffs. Yet, on the final day against Watford, we all stopped back at the end to clap the players on the pitch, because I think there was a feeling of, okay, we've not got the playoffs. However, we've had a really great cup run. We played some half decent football this season, especially in the season. We finished quite strong, hadn't we? And there was a feeling of, right, okay, next season we're going to go in there with a lot of hope. The foundations are there now, and we're going to have a really good run at the next season. This season, final day, personally, I just watched it out at the end.
Me too. Yeah.
And but someone outside, I think, well, wait a minute, you still had the chance of the playoffs this season, and you left. Though last season it was confirmed you weren't in the playoffs, but you stayed. But that's just because I just didn't think those players or the manager deserved any appreciation for what we've seen this season. It just hasn't been good enough on any metric. That said, the foundations just aren't there next season. It's concerning when you look at the squad. You think, look at the overhaul that's going to have to happen. Do I trust the recruitment team and the manager to rebuild it? Not really, no. We were told previously, we'll be using loan signings to fill the squad, and then January, an absolute scattergun approach and sign a lot of players on loan again who are leaving in the summer. So when it comes to Carrick, it's one of those where I'm really struggling to make it. I want to make an argument for him. The only argument I can make for him is, as a coach, prior to this season, really has improved players, and him and Scott have sort of created a sort of situation where we're able to bring in younger players, develop them, and then sell them on for a profit, and it's helped to keep the club financially sustainable. If I was to try and make an argument, that would be it. But other than that, I haven't got an argument for keeping him. And some of the arguments that I hear for me are totally disingenuous. Like, people saying that, he's been let down by the squad. The squad's terrible, but at the same time saying that, well, if he leaves, you won't be able to attract this quality of players. You're like, well, hang on a minute, which is it? Is it the players aren't good enough, or we won't be able to attract this quality of players if he goes? So it's difficult. I would struggle to make an argument for him to stay, other than has something gone on behind the scenes that is a mitigating factor that we don't know about. But there's just nothing. I say game management for me is still poor. I know people will say, well, you can't really judge his sort of man management skills because we're not in the dressing room. We hear his interviews on BBC Tees or on the club's website, and people say, well, the guy that you see there is a different guy to who'll be in the dressing room, would be a totally different guy. And that might be the case. But when you hear his interviews and you're thinking, what is he talking about? And then you think it's not particularly inspiring. And then, the players come out of the dressing room at the start of must-win matches, when they come out at the start of the game or at half-time, as if he's just stood there and read out a takeaway menu to them. You think, it's hard to sort of say, well, he must be different, because you're thinking, well, he might be, but what I'm seeing with my eyes on that pitch doesn't really indicate that it is any different. It has totally different to, I don't know if you saw when I think, is it Miron Mushlich for Plymouth? Yeah. When he got appointed, and they played some of his talk, went to the players when he joined. They put it on the socials, and sat there listening to it. There was, I felt like I wanted to get on my seat, tear my shirt off like Hulk Hogan, and just run for the nearest brick wall for the bloke. It proper inspiring. I'm just thinking, are our players getting something similar? It doesn't feel like it. That's something saying it doesn't happen, but Yeah, I'm really struggling. And then when you hear reports from the local journalists that he was behind the signings of Ryan Giles, George Edmondson, he selected Ian Nacho for his experience. It doesn't bode well at all, because we sat here after the January window. I think you gave it a 5, and I thought I'd be generous to give it a 5.5 out of 10. And that was only really because of Mark Travers.
Yeah.
And you just think, I'm really, really struggling. Really struggling to come up with an argument as to why he should stay. And I say the fact that we're finishing below clubs like Bristol City, like Millwall, I mean, no disrespect to those clubs, but when people say that this squad's not good enough, for me, it's absolute rubbish, because, yeah, the squad's not as good as Sunderland, it's not as good as Burnley, it's not as good as Sheffield United, Leeds, etc. But for me, the managers of those teams are getting more from their teams than that. I mean, they're getting more. The team is more than the sum of its parts. They are getting more out of that group of players. I don't think Michael Carrick's even getting par out this team. Never mind overachieving with them. So everywhere I look, I find it difficult to create an argument with him for him to stay. I wish I could. Some people can, or just have blind faith that he's going to turn it around. If actually fair play to you, personally, I like to see some data, some statistics, something with my eyes, something I can hold on to and say, okay, I've seen this and I've seen this. Okay, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but personally, I can't.
Yeah, I equally am in a position where, I like Michael Carrick a lot, and there's been times when he's been manager, I've really believed. I've really believed, and there's times when we've played football that has mesmerised me. When I look at the last time I was mesmerised by Boro, probably over 2 years ago, and I'm now sat in a position where I've willed him to do well for so long, and there's been credit in the bank for so long, and I'm at a point now where I'm struggling to see the route to which we're successful under him, and my faith in Carrick's Boro, or this project, or this package, whatever you want to call it, is nil. And I think that's representative of a lot of fans. You alluded to the Norwich post-match scenes. That would have been alarming. I think if you're Steve Gibson, you're looking at half the fans. There's been a few boos, but I think the fact that most just left. There's a lot of fans that I think have checked out of this manager, and he's either going to have to do a hell of a lot to win them back on side, or, as we'll probably get onto when we talk about the next chapter, if he stays and we don't start well next season, things could turn nasty real quick. So I'm at the point where I've lost faith in him, and I would be open for a change. I don't like saying Carrick out, because I don't like wanting, like, it sounds like I'm willing for a manager to lose his job, but I am open to something different, and I'm wanting a shift slightly towards us just being more solid and more trustworthy as a team and a winning football team, because I don't want a drastic, let's go from Monk to Warnock to Wilder to Pulis to, all these crazy different styles that have got us in this point to which, 9 years today, we were last promoted to the Premier League, and we've been stuck here for now over a year longer than what we were the previous spell. But I'm at a point now where I'm over the good football that he plays, because it's a myth. It's a myth, quite frankly. A defensive image. Well, we play good football. And I'm like, yeah, but when? 20 minutes here, 10 minutes there, for a spell of possession here. But when have we really played good football consistently over 90 minutes for starters, and then across multiple games? Barely ever in the last season and a bit. So you can't even defend the guy and say that he plays good football. And a lot of that is down to, other players good enough to play his style of football. And I'm sure we'll get onto that when we touch upon the recruitment. But I would just like a manager who will just come in and just shift us a little bit, build from the back, and make sure that we have a strong base to start with, because the one big skepticism I cannot get over with Carrick, and this is regardless of his squad, how good it is, how bad it is, recruitment, I've never ever been convinced that we've been good enough defensively under him. You know, when we got to the playoffs that first time, we were reliant on just blowing teams away and outscoring them. And I feel like the chances of us having that level of a team again is very, very low. We'd either have to spend a fortune to have an actual squad that would be good enough to do that, or we'd have to strike gold in the loan market again, which we believe we don't want to do. So I'm sort of looking at it and thinking, Carrick's philosophy is all well and good. The football he wants to play is brilliant, and if he could play it every week, we'd be in dreamland. But I don't think we'll ever have the squad good enough to do that. So I'm asking if we can just shift things a little bit. Okay, we can't play as good football. Let's make sure we're solid at the back. But I've got no faith that we'll ever be good enough at the back under Carrick. And you need to be good defensively to get promoted. I mean, Burnley have proven, and this isn't me saying I want to play like Burnley, but they've proven, and many others have, that you can have an average attack and a great defence and still get promoted. But it doesn't work the other way. You can't have an outstanding attack and a crap defence, because it won't be consistent enough. So until we have that strong base, and I can see proof that he's willing to build Boro from the back, I just have no faith that we'll ever get there. And, you know, I don't think he's interested in building Boro from the back. You know, the neglect of the defence in January when we sold Matt Clark, which is fine if he doesn't want to be here. But then the blasé comment of, oh, we'll be all right. You know, we've got 3 centre-halves. None of them are ever fit. And the backups are Luke Ayling and Johnny Howson. You know, me and you said in that podcast, we pointed out how quickly that it would fall apart, because suddenly you'd have Johnny Howson at the back, you'd have to rely on Dijksteel at right back with no cover there. And it was just so obvious. I just don't think he's interested in building a team that's defensively good enough. And I don't think he's interested in bringing in the sort of players that I think we need. The makeup of this team needs more strong, mentally tough characters, you know, experienced championship pros that might not be the greatest on the eye, but they'll make a difference and get you over the line. He's interested in nice tippy-tappy flair players who will mesmerise one week and they'll be great when we're 3-0 up against Oxford, but they'll go missing when we're 1-0 down at Millwall. So I just feel like regardless of what we do, we'll never be able to give him a squad that's good enough to play the way he wants. So he either has to adapt, which I don't think he will, or we have to look elsewhere. And that's why I'm looking ahead to the oncoming season, if he's still here, and just the future. And I just can't see a route to which Boro are successful. I mean, can you see a route to which Boro are successful under Michael Carrick? Because for me, without them fundamentals, you know, that makeup of the squad, them characteristics, we're just going to, I think, be here again in 12 months' time, probably 8th, 9th, 10th, having conceded 50 goals with an average home record, missing out in the playoffs again. That's just where I stand.
I think you use a good phrase there about faith, and that's what it is for me. It's not Carrick out, he's an idiot, you know, worst manager ever, clown, get him out. Or it's not like that. It's basically just, I don't have any faith, and that is purely it. The faith bank is being drained. It's empty. For me, too much would have to change for it to be a success now. We'd have to change the squad. I'm not convinced that several members of the squad are good enough. Many of them brought in by him. I just don't think the basics. I just don't think he's adaptable. The game where I started to think, hang on a minute, something is seriously not right at this football club, was when I was watching just before Christmas the Plymouth away game. I'm sat there watching it. They were managed by Wayne Rooney, bottom of the league, bottom of just about every single metric going, and they tore us apart constantly. Down at our wing, our fullbacks were getting just destroyed by them, and the camera was panning to him, stood there, his arms full. I'm just thinking, just do something, change the shape, change the formation, put a sub on, do something, because we're getting destroyed here. And he didn't. It's just that lack of adaptability. I mentioned Millwall earlier. Going there, and you're thinking half time it's 0-0. Alex Steele brings a striker on, and then he brings another 3 players on, and then they score. And then afterwards, when he's asked by the Gazette, it's like, oh well, People have all about the subs, but the subs didn't change it. It was there was a change of momentum, and you're thinking, yes, Michael, because they made 4 subs, that was a change of momentum. That's why they ended up getting the goal. But I just don't think he sees it. It's so frustrating as a fan when you stood there and you've seen your opposition making these proactive changes. And I've used this phrase a lot this season, that he's reactive rather than proactive. That's certainly how it feels. And why, when the new season starts, is it going to be any different? Why is it going to change? And again, people will say, "Oh well, he's not making changes because the squad's not good enough." You think, what? So Millwall's squad is good enough to make 4 changes from the bench and ours isn't. I just don't buy it. Yeah, it's one of those where that's it. We've got to have some, like you said, some pace, especially in the wide areas. We've got to have some toughness in the team in the middle, because at the minute we're too weak. Off the ball, we are appalling. We've got to do better off the ball. Again, go back to Millwall, look at Millwall goal. The 2 central midfielders are just jogging back casually, not picking up the men, and one of the loose men goes and scores. There's a lot that's got to change for us to be competitive next season, and I'm just not convinced that he's the person who's going to be adaptable enough to do that.
Yeah, the frustrating thing in a sense is, I think if he had the squad that Leeds have, or if he was given 50 million quid, which is crazy in the Championship, but that's probably the sort of money you'd need to buy a good number of top, and I mean top quality, technically good Championship players, maybe a few loans. If he had the funds available to get the exact players perfectly suited to play his way, I think he'd tear it up. I think his team would tear it up. They probably would outscore the opposition, and we'd probably see a 22-20, a 22-23 like Boro side, or probably even better, who could just blow teams away every single week. And maybe they'd score that many goals, they would maybe cover up the defensive shortcomings. But I just can't ever see us doing that. I think we struggled in that season. We had to rebuild last season, and unfortunately, we have to rebuild again. There's no platform there for me. I mean, we were in a better, as you said, we were in a better place last season.
Yeah.
To go again this year, and it feels like this summer we are a good step or 2 back from where we were. So if we went into this season with optimism and a decent base to do well, and we've absolutely screwed it, what's to say that it's going to be any better next season when there's more work to do off the pitch, there's more recruitment? I can't see where it's going to change unless he changes his style of play, because for me, he's got to recognise that his style is not going to work consistently week to week, because the players, they're just not good enough to do it week in, week out. Maybe against Oxford at home, they can, and they'll blow them away when we're given the chance to play our way and we get into our flow. But the second you knock a Michael Carrick side out of its flow, and that doesn't take much, it takes a physical Millwall side to stick an extra striker on and just lump the ball forward and get Boro's defenders turning the other way, or Plymouth bombarding us and doubling up down the wings and doubling up on our fullbacks. It doesn't take much. You knock us out of sync, we're nullified. That's it. We're done.
Forward like deck chairs.
Yeah, and not only are we nullified from a tactical sense, but I think the character within the team, the makeup of the players, they're not mentally strong enough to dig themselves out of them big moments. I mean, how many big games have Boro won this season? How many big games have we come out on the other side of, compared to how many have we absolutely thrown away? So I just feel like even if he's backed, and that's an argument I keep saying, well, back him. And I'm like, well, even if we back him, is he going to put enough into the defence to buy the characters and the defenders we need? Is he going to put enough effort in, and thought and money into getting us the midfielders we need? Or are we just going to buy more technically gifted footballers who, they'll look good on a good day, but they're just not going to do it consistently enough unless he alters his style of play, which I don't think he'll do. We have to be cleverer and we have to be more methodical, because we're never going to have the players and the money that the top sides are going to have. So we've got to try and do it in a cleverer way to get ourselves in there. And I can't see that happening under Michael Carrick. I mean, there was a chance to prove himself last year, but as I say, we are further back now than where we were. So what is there to suggest that the upcoming season's going to be any different, other than, as you say, blind optimism that it will just click.
Yeah, and this season it's going to be tougher. We've got Wrexham coming up the league, Birmingham coming up. They're not here to make the numbers up. They're going to spend some money. And people say, oh well, Steve Gibson, he can't compete with the parachute payment clubs, which I accept that completely. But I mentioned this to you, the frustrating thing for me is that it's not just parachute payment clubs now. You've got clubs who are fairly fresh out of League One coming up and surpassing us now. Yeah. I mean, I know Luton have got relegated this season. We had Luton come up from League One to the Championship. They've been in the Premier League. They were in the Premier League last season, weren't they? Ipswich, obviously they're coming down, but they're going to have parachute payments now. They came up fresh up of League One. Coventry were in League Two not so long ago. They're now in their second playoff semi-final in 3 seasons. Sunderland, same for them. They're in League One last season. They're in their second. Not last season, but they spent 4. They spent 4 seasons in League One. They're now in their second Championship semi-final in 3 seasons. And for us, I think we've done 2 semi-finals in 7 seasons. So it's clubs coming out of League One. So you're thinking, hang on a minute. So they've got smaller budgets than us. So how are they able to surpass us? How are they able to leapfrog us? Why are we constantly missing out on the playoffs and not achieving our goals and all that? You can understand the other clubs with the parachute payments because money does make a big difference, but they're recruiting smarter. They're better run, better managed, and we need to up our game because, as I said, there's clubs coming up this season who are not here to make the numbers up, and it's going to be as competitive a championship as ever. And I think when we get maybe 10, 12 games at the next season, I think people will realise what a massive missed opportunity the season was, because it couldn't really have felt better for us to finish last season so strong as we did, retain the players that we did. The club were confident we could go and challenge for promotion. They kept the players there at the start of the season. And I think when I looked at it, I think before January, because people keep saying the January window killed us, before January, our average position was 8th. And prior to the Coventry final game, our average position post-January was 8th. And we finished 10th. So read from that what you will.
Yeah, and a good pal of ours who we actually bumped into on the final day, Boro Lee. I'll call him Boro Lee. I know he's that's not his actual name, but we'll call him Boro Lee. He put out a really good stat, didn't he? Which is being referenced quite a lot because we'll move on to the recruitment in a bit. Boro with Lathendork versus Boro without Lathendork, and the points per game actually was not that much different. So yeah, we'll get on to January in a second and whether that is a valid excuse or not. But as I said, the season is from August to May, and January is only half the story. And we were throwing away games prior to January. We were mismanaging games prior to January. So that's why I can only see next season being even bigger of an uphill climb than this one. And the league's going to be tougher, as you say. We've got more work to do this summer than we did before. And there are managers that are probably going to appear on the market this summer that I think we're going to sadly just overlook. And where I am now, and I don't know where you are on this, it's a very subjective point, and I get everyone's different. But we mentioned about Boro playing good football being a myth. Don't get me wrong, I would love nothing more than to see Middlesbrough Football Club playing the football we did 2 years ago, winning every week and being successful. Of course I would. That would be my ideal choice every single time. But accepting that we don't have a squad that would be good enough to do that, I am at a point now where I'm like, I don't care about good football. We've had good football for 2.5 years. What have we got to show for it? What have we got to show for it? Really? Yeah, we've had some good nights and we've had some good isolated moments, but what have we got to show for it? I'm at a point where I just want winning football, and that might be me asking for a lot, but I think what I mean by that is if you 1-0 up in a tough game and you're not playing particularly well and you've got to think, right, we should get out of here with something, you shut up shop, you defend hard, you switch it up, you find a way to win. If we're knocked out of our rhythm, like we have been many times under Michael Carrick. You do something different, you find a way to win. And what made me feel like, feel even more like this was when I saw a picture of that Boro team from 2015-16, 9 years ago to the day since we were promoted. And I looked at that team and I thought, we had some fantastic away days. We battered Brighton. We ended their ridiculously unbeaten record. We had some great games, because people assume Karanka's team was all defence, but we had some games where we did blow teams away. But then we went to Nottingham Forest and we ground out. Or we went to Ipswich.
We actually won at the City ground.
We did, and that was a team that, if things weren't going well, you could trust and rely on them to find a way of getting the job done. If they didn't win, they'd draw. But at home, we were just impenetrable. And I'm at a point now where I don't care for good football. That's a bonus. I just want a team that I can trust to win, can get themselves out of tough situations, dig themselves out and pick up results when they shouldn't. Because unfortunately, this team under Carrick, it's been a running theme, not just this season, not just last season. A team that finds ways of losing games as a ways to find ways of winning games. And I just want a winning team I can go up the Riverside and rely on. And you mentioned it at the top of the show about this season. I've never felt so untrustworthy of a Boro side. I've never felt less trust in a side. I just want a winning football team. I don't know where you stand on that, because it's subjective, isn't it? The type of football you want to see, but I don't care about good football. I just want to see winning football I can trust.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's subjective. What one person thinks is beautiful football, another doesn't. I mean, personally, I can't stand possession football. I absolutely hate it. Slow, tippy-tappy possession, I absolutely despise it. So other people might say it's beautiful football. That's entirely their opinion. I respect that, but my personal opinion, I much prefer seeing teams that are like quick, strong on the counter attack, and a few tricky wingers and stuff like that. I'd rather see that sort of football than the football we're playing now. It just isn't exciting at all. I can't remember. I think other than the last time I went to a home game this season, or even an away game, and enjoyed the football, was the first half on Boxing Day. And we're now, 7th of May? And that was during the last time. Since then, I just simply haven't enjoyed the football. Before that, I was at Oxford. Obviously, that was very good. The Hull and the Luton game were decent. Other than that, I can't think of any other game. And for a team who plays nice football, that's not good enough, is it? That's not anywhere near consistent enough. So yeah, for me, the good football thing's a myth. It's it depends. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? So for me, I would rather play winning football, because is it two seasons in the last 16 we've been in the Premier League, something like that? It's not good enough, is it? It's not good enough. So I would rather us play a bit uglier and have some success getting in the playoffs, possible promotion, and then Steve Gibson has an opportunity there to repay himself for all the investment that he's put into the club over the years. He's not going to have to stump up for a championship club that's making losses week after week after week. And it's a chance for us as a club. Then, if you're your club, it's the benefits there are quite obvious, aren't there? It's a chance for you to go in the Premier League, find it very difficult, and probably only win 4 or 5 games all season. However, when you come back to the Championship, if you don't employ Gary Monk, it's potentially going to be fantastic, because you're going to win pretty much every week. So, yeah, that's for me. I'll happily sacrifice what people refer to as nice football or pretty football and have some winning football.
Yeah, and another point to chuck in before I move on to recruitment. This is probably completely hypothetical, because I don't think we'll get promoted. But if we did, he'd have to massively adjust anyway, because we'd get absolutely eaten alive in the Premier League. Teams do anyway, but I think playing our way, we'd get railroaded. We'd have to switch it up and be so much more solid than what we are now. Otherwise, it would just be, doesn't even bear thinking about. Another reason, obviously, it's not just all Michael Carrick. There are other factors as to why this season has gone wrong. I guess the main argument is whether Michael Carrick has a part to play within them as well. Another is obviously recruitment. Now, this is just me playing a bit of devil's advocate, and this will help lead you into the point on recruitment. But is there an argument? Because the biggest argument for Carrick is that he was massively let down in January. He lost Emmanuel Latilaf on the final day. He lost Ben Doak through injury. So you have two of your most dynamic forward players out of the team. And of course, there were injuries throughout, as I mentioned. But on the recruitment, is that a point that Michael Carrick was hindered, let down, or just the rug was pulled underneath him, as some have suggested, by recruitment? Or is there more to play? How much of that is to blame, and where do you stand on recruitment, Carrick, both, and how that all sort of went?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because we as fans don't know 100% who was responsible for who. Now, Ryan Jars, I have no doubt, was a Michael Carrick signing. I know we discussed it. We kind of said, right, he's not going to improve us remotely defensively. However, if he can improve us going forward and help, with those teams that come and sit deep, you can maybe argue it's an upgrade in that sense. Didn't see it at all. Didn't see it at all from him. I said at the time, I took a bit of flack for it as well on X when I said, George Edmondson, when he got recalled, thanks for your service, don't sign him back. For me, he's a perfectly fine defender in terms of cover. If you have an injury or two, then stick him in there. But nowhere near good enough to play the way that Michael Carrick demands that his players play, playing out from the back. Too slow to play a high line. So the amount of mistakes he makes with his passing. And first of all, and then sign him, I'm thinking, what's going on here? I was at one point in the January, I was quite optimistic at one point when we signed Whittaker, because I wasn't expecting, I know we spoke at the time, I was expecting little tweaks here and there, but it felt like a mini overhaul was going on there. I wasn't expecting that at all. So I was thinking, okay. We've sold Jones, who obviously wanted to leave, personal reasons, fair play to the lads. Went to Luton, and we signed. You're thinking, okay, Jones out, Whittaker in. That's some good business there. And I was thinking, so at the halfway point of the window, I was thinking, it's going okay here. We're just waiting for these defensive reinforcements, and then you can call it a good window. The defensive reinforcements obviously then never came. The decision to sign Iheanacho, I said, we flagged this at the time, didn't we? We said, there's people saying, oh, he's done it at Champions League level, he's done it in an FA Cup final. We were just like, he scored double figures once his whole career.
He's an upgrade on Latilaf.
Oh, he's not good at laughing at all. Yeah. But I just found that one astounding. Whoever signed him needs to do the walk of atonement from Game of Thrones through the streets of Middlesbrough, because I'm sorry, how on earth did have two talking heads who we've never worked a day in football recruitment in our lives. We spend our match days with a pie in one hand and a pint in the other, and yet just one glance on transfer market told us he'd played the equivalent of 9 games in 2024. They had the opportunity to scout him, to meet him, to give him a medical, and they still decided to sign him. I remember being at Sheffield United away, and when I saw him the first time, I just thought, oh, this can't be real. This has got to be a wind-up. The bloke was 2 stone overweight at least, and you're thinking, this is meant to be our latte lap replacement, and no matter what anyone says about his agent or he wanted out, etc., fine. But I tell you what, he gave his absolute all on that pitch. there was times when where we sit at the Riverside, he'd turn in front of us in like the left back slot, and I'm thinking, Emmanuel, save your energy, get forward. But he was running around the pitch like his life depended on it, and I'm thinking, you wouldn't think this guy wanted to leave, and you just replaced him with a sloth. It was incredible. Whoever made that signing, there needs to be serious questions asked about what on earth they were thinking, because all I'm seeing from the local journals is that, Boro thought they got a great deal, and we paid less than half his wages. It's 75. I know we weren't paying £75,000 a week, but it's an absolute disgrace that anyone who's being paid £75,000 a week to be a professional footballer, professional athlete, is in that state mid-season. And obviously then we found out that Victor Orta was part of the deal.
Of course he was.
He must have been laughing his socks off when he put the phone down and we agreed to sign him. So that was again, but now you're reading in the media, there was talk of Strelic, there was talk of Iheanacho, and Carrick likes Iheanacho's experience, and Johnny Evans gave him a rave review. So how much Carrick was involved in that, again, we don't know. It's hard to say, but I'm pretty certain that, Kim Scott didn't go to his office at Rockcliffe, knock on the door and say, "Morning, Michael, meet Kelechi," and then walk off. Michael Carrick has had an input in that. If I'm Michael Carrick and I see Kelechi Iheanacho walk at the Rockcliffe for his medical, I'm pulling Kim Scott or whoever it's what one side saying, "You can't be serious. This is a joke. You send him packing. We ain't signing this guy." So he has had an input in Kelechi Iheanacho. We don't know to what extent, but he has had an impact in Kelechi Iheanacho. And you just had to take one look at the bloke to know that he was not what we wanted. Matt Travers, you'll note that no one is disputing as to who signed Matt Travers. Did Carrick sign him? Did Scott sign him? There's no links to the local journals on that one, because it was a really, really good signing. And it's one where if we'd have probably made it in the summer, obviously, we probably wouldn't have been able to, Bournemouth wouldn't have been able to release him for various reasons. But if we'd been able to get him earlier, I think we'd have been close at the playoffs, because Stenny Dieng was just chucking the ball in first half of the season. So, shame that we didn't get him earlier. Inning Junior, I thought he had some really good games for us and some games where he was a bit meh. So, I didn't have an opinion on him because I'd never seen him play, and it's weird. I still kind of don't have a strong opinion either way in him, whether he's really, really good or not. There were some games I thought he was really, really good, but I don't really know how good he is, despite him being here half a season now. Probably because we played out of position, because we didn't sign a left back who could defend. Whitaker, I still don't really have much of an opinion on him. I think he's going to be one for next season. Disappointing so far, but it's not what to give up on, is he, at his age and experience? But yeah, January, it kneecapped us, didn't it? It absolutely kneecapped us. Personally, I was a big fan of Matt Clark. I know I'm not going to say for a moment that he was perfect, but I thought he was probably our best out-and-out defender. He wasn't the quickest, wasn't fantastic playing up from the back. Rav was far better from playing at the back than him, but I thought the two complemented each other really well, Rav and Clark. So I was disappointed to see him leave. And if it was just he's leaving, then I'd have said, fine, fair enough. We'd have got a replacement, but we didn't. And then obviously Michael Carrick was asked in his press conference, and it was the famous, "No, we'll be all right." And it turned we weren't. I know people say, "Oh, well, Johnny Elston came and he did all right," but it's not really the point, is it? Because if we'd have had an actual centre half or right back, then the makeup of the team is different, then, isn't it? So if you had a centre half, you can put Johnny Elston in the midfield. If you sign another left back, you can play that left back at left back. You can play it in junior high up the pitch, and straight away you got two more options there. So I don't think January was as fatal as people make out, because we weren't. If we were steady in the playoffs all season, and then after January we fell off a cliff, sort of like Walsall style, we just sort of collapsed. I think you could have a really, really strong argument there to say January killed us. I don't think that's the case. I think it certainly didn't help. In fact, in many ways, it just made a bad situation worse. But it didn't cost us playoffs, in my opinion. It just compounded an already rubbish situation we were in.
Yeah, I couldn't put it better myself. I think it was a collective screw up. Whether and yet people say, recruitment's a separate blame in terms of why the season went the way it did. But I believe, and I think Kieran Scott's went on record in saying Michael Carrick has a say on every single signing. And why wouldn't he? He's the head coach, as you say. Kieran Scott's not going to sign players for him. We know how particular Carrick is about his style of play, so he'll have a part to play in every incoming and outgoing player. I have no doubt, and that goes back to my previous concern about, again, we're bringing players in, but they're not good enough to play his way, so we're not going to get what we need from them. So we're already on the back foot there unless he adapts and changes his style of play, which he won't. As we said, Travers was amazing, best signing we've made. It's a shame it doesn't sound like like any of the loanees will be here next season. The defence was obviously, as we've mentioned, a disaster. It was neglect, if I'm honest. A team that could already not defend and struggle defensively, which I think will always be the case, as I mentioned earlier. But you let a decent defender go in Matt Clark. Okay, if he wants to leave, I've got no gripes in letting him go, but you don't replace him. You just sign a player who was already here, who already wasn't quite up to the standard we needed him to be. As you mentioned, the only other defender was a defender who isn't known for defending. So there was a glaring neglect for Boro's defence. There was no subconscious effort at all to make our defence better. And it was summed up in that one line in Carrick's press conference, as you say, we'll be all right. As even though we all said we had 3 defenders left, all of them with bad fitness records, we could see where it was going to go. And again, we're just fans on the concourse, and we could see exactly where it was going to go, and it did. Why couldn't they have seen? And the Gazette reported, and again, you can take it or leave it, you can believe it or not. They said that Carrick was offered defensive options, which he turned down. If that's the case, were they because they couldn't play his style of play, or was it simply because he didn't think we needed them? Either way, I'd have just got the bodies in regardless. And then, you move further up the pitch. Whittaker's a tough one because he apparently was the replacement for Jones. That was that them two deals went sort of in sequence of each other. And I think the plan always was to have Doak and Whittaker on the right as 2 completely different options. And I think had we had them both, we could have done different things in different games. And the one honest excuse I can absolutely get behind that Carrick couldn't help was the loss of Ben Doak. That was crippling, because you already lose Latilaf and then you lose Ben Doak. Our 2 most paciest dynamic attackers gone. It takes so much out of the side. And the loss of Ben Doak was huge because it shoehorned Whittaker into that position. And without that width, you had Whittaker cutting inside into an area of the pitch where you already had Kelechi Iheanacho off in his as. You've then got the left-sided inverted winger, whether it be Bergs or Gorizaz, coming in as well. Suddenly you've got all 3 of Boro's attacking players behind the striker coming central. No pace, no width. We saw against Norwich, they just sat narrow, compact, defended the central areas, job done, because we had nothing going down the sides. The only player going down the sides was Tommy Conway, just to try and get into the game. And then we had no one in the box. So the knock-on effect of the Doak situation is a killer. And I do sympathise massively with Carrick on that. But I don't think Whittaker's helped himself with how he's come in. I do hope he does well and improves. But for me, the biggest thing we need next season is pace and width. And that's the opposite of what Morgan Whittaker offers us. So unless he finds an alternative place in this team, I'd much rather have an out-and-out right-sided winger like Ben Doak to get down the sides and stretch defences. And Tyree Stolen's been mentioned. Maybe he is that player. I don't know if there's any truth to that. And yeah, the one year, as you say, you can't excuse is Iheanacho. It's not even that. I mean, it's one thing that he was as unfit as he was and was already pretty unconvincing from his numbers, his stats, but his profile is what I can't get over. In what world is he remotely a replacement for Latilaf? Even if his numbers are nowhere near as good or equally as good, he was a completely different profile of player. So how are you going to put him in? How is he going to replace Latilaf when he's the complete? He couldn't be any further from agile. He had no pace whatsoever. He come here in an absolute state, as you say. So you're then basically limiting us to one option up top, which was Tommy Conway. And then you're having to shoehorn Iheanacho into a position that knocks Azaz out wide into a less favourable position for him. And it just completely skewed and knocked the whole makeup of our attacking three behind the striker, and it ruined us. And there was talk of Adam Armstrong and whether that deal was already done with West Brom. And I know he didn't pull up any trees at West Brom, but he was at least a similar profile to Latilaf. Could have made a difference in this Boro's side, even if we'd have gone down to League One and found a pacey forward who at least could offer something similar. The overall makeup and dynamic of the attacking side, the attacking four, wouldn't have changed as much. The knock-on effect from Iheanacho just being there was massive enough. Never mind just how badly out of shape he was. So I would love to know what on earth we were thinking with that one. It's one of the worst loan signings we've ever made, if I'm honest.
One of the worst signings, period, of a mad loan.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
so on that, I mean, Illing Jr., we mentioned him as well. Yeah, couldn't play in his stronger position. We won't be seeing him again, unfortunately. How much of that then do you think is on Carrick, and how much of it is on Scott? How much of it is on both? And does it worry you going forward that Boro dropped such a... Because I was pretty comfortable with the recruitment up till January, and then it's really put a bit of a doubt in my mind.
That's it. I'd been singing Cameron Scott's praises and the recruitment's praises up until January, and it felt like, if you remember Hull's transfer window, January transfer window last season, it felt like that, where it was just a total scattergun approach of players of random profiles who you're thinking, none of this is making any sense. We went into that window, and if you just said, and we discussed it, it was like, oh, what do we think we need? It was like, well, if Lath needs, we'll need a replacement, probably on loan, because we've got Conway. We need a goalkeeper, centre half, and ideally a left back and a right back. So it was other than replace Lath if he's going, or maybe a defensive midfielder. I mean, it was all defensive based players that we needed, and we didn't do it. Well, Edmondson was already there, so you can't really include that one. So it was basically Travers, who again was brilliant, and Ryan Giles. That was it. Illing Jr. wasn't starting to play left back; he was starting to play high up the pitch. But I totally agree that Doak is the one that Carrick couldn't possibly have helped. Unless he on the training pitch went in with a meaty tackle and took him out himself. Then no, not to blame for that one. Yeah, his hands are clean on that one. You do have to sympathise with that one because that's completely out of his control. In terms of recruitment, we discussed faith earlier, and my faith in recruitment has took a bit of a blow. Not every transfer window is going to be spot on. Not everyone's going to be fantastic. Not everyone's going to be. When we signed Archer and Ramsey and people like that, but just how bad it was, just that I couldn't even see what the thinking was. Normally, you're like, okay, that signing come off like maybe like Whittaker. It's not came off yet, but I can see what they were thinking, what they were trying to do with Morgan Whittaker, with Edmondson and with Iheanacho, and even Somerset Illing Jr. I'm thinking, Yeah, and he was a decent player. He had some really good games for us. We were thinking we needed defenders more than we needed in Lynn Junior. So for me, the recruitment is certainly going into the summer with a point to prove, because up to this point, all they've proved for me so far is that they can identify some young players who the head coach can improve and they can flip for a profit. They haven't proven yet that they can build a squad, because the squad that we had at the start of the season had flaws. In January, we didn't address a single one of them. Long term, obviously Travis came in, but he'll be off now. So we go to next season with a massive squad rebuild, and you're thinking, wait a minute, how have we got ourselves in a situation where Carrick's first season, we had the maximum out of, what was it, 5 loan players in the team. We then went into the following season, and we started off poor. We lost at home to Millwall. And it was like, okay, we're not going to use the loan system because we want to build a squad. We don't be left in this situation again. Coming into this season, we're going to go to the next season in that exact situation again, because we've not built. Arguably worse, because we've not built the squad properly. All we've done is just flip players for profit. And in the case of Rodgers, we've probably sold him close to the bottom of his actual value. So I think the recruitment's got a point to prove this summer, and they have to address where this squad is not right. The pace, the strength, should we say grit? I won't say passion. We'll say good. We'll say grit. We'll say grit. Because there needs to be like a nastiness in this team. I remember going to Elland Road under Tony Pulis, and it wasn't a very particularly exciting game. I think it's when Martin Braithwaite put his transfer request in, so he didn't play. We drew 0-0. I think it was a Friday night match. Came out of there, and I remember talking to some of their fans. I had a bit of crap with them, and it was basically, you guys were one of those horrible teams that we faced. Like, absolute bunch of you-know-whats, just a horrible, nasty, niggly team. And you know what? I was like, yeah. That's what, every now and then, that's what I want from my team, just to be a horrible, nasty, niggly team. I remember under Karanka, that Norwich game where I think Adoma scored out was known goal early on at Carrow Road, and we just hung on by our fingernails all game, but we were just a horrible, nasty team. And even again under Pulis, you remember Sheffield Wednesday away, I think we were 2-1 up, it was the last minute, and you had Adam Clayton sort of laying across the ball, like it was like a rugby scrum, laying across the goal. You had all the players diving in there to try and stop the ball going in. There was a real sort of like I say, camaraderie, and this real sort of like nasty streak in us. And this team just doesn't have it. It's all similar profile players. Like the likes of Silvera, the likes of Hamilton, the likes of Whitaker. Even to some extent, people like McGree. They're all sort of smaller technical players who, on the day, if things go well, if a 2 or 3-0 up against a team that's not particularly fantastic, I'm sure they look great. But Sally's always injured, and there's only so many inverted wingers we can buy. So I think we need to. I think it's been mentioned a few times on when you've been on the breakdown about problem solving and different ways we can play. It's very predictable. It's so predictable. I mean, you watch us play, and it's like, if we can see it as fans, the opposition managers can see it, and it must be really easy to stop. So, big challenge for recruitment over the summer, and they are certainly going to be on trial with a lot of people, because whereas a lot of people just trusted them explicitly with the transfers, now there's a lot of scepticism after that January window, and with the state the squad's in now as to what exactly are they doing.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. go back to a previous point, as I say, are we capable under Carrick, or just in general, of building a squad with that balance and with the makeup that gets you promoted? Because an argument for Carrick is that the squad's limited and that the players are all samey, which is true. But we've recruited them sort of players. How many more Sammy Silveras, Micah Hamiltons, Delano Bergsorgs, Morgan Whitakers do we want? Inverted wingers. They're all the same. They're all players that are of the same profile. These are players that as I say again, Michael Carrick wants. Does he really want an Adam Clayton in midfield? Does he really want to really put effort in behind a very strong, tough, no-nonsense defence? Are we capable of building that? Or are we just wanting to build a nice tippy-tappy team of flair players that are great one day, but then too soft and brittle the other? And will this team ever have the character needed to go away to Millwall and scrape out a 1-0 win on the final day to get top 2 or to get playoffs? That there's all them question marks. Whether it's recruitment, whether it's Carrick, whether it's what the higher-ups want, whether it's what Scott wants, whether it's what Carrick wants. It's just, the building of this team, it's not one that convinces me is being built with all the minerals that you need to be promoted. It's just going to be a nice tippy-tappy team, and I think we've seen for long enough now that'll only get you so far. So I really hope, and this leads us on to, I guess, our final point on the squad. What do you want to see going forward in terms of Boro's squad and what we bring to because there's enough positions to fill, and we could be here all day, but for me, we need a goalkeeper, and I know there's a lot of talk of distribution, and it's funny, in the concourse and in the stands when we had Senny Dieng, there's fans booting off about how he can't save a shot and he won't cross, come for a cross and he'll punch when he shouldn't. Nothing said about his distribution. And yet when Travers was in goal, I was hearing people moaning about how bad his kicking is, even though he's just saved 3 shots in a row and kept us in a game. So we need a goalkeeper that is a good shot stopper first and foremost. Whether that will be Solbrin or whether we'll go in for someone else, time will tell. I think we need more centre-halves just because I don't trust the fitness record of the centre-halves we have. But I also want better centre-halves who, again, not just good on the ball, will put their head, their foot where it hurts and do anything to win. Maybe bringing back Lenihan, bringing him in might be a big boost in that respect. We need better fullbacks. I'm shocked we've not addressed the right-back situation earlier. We've got Tommy Smith retired. Maybe we couldn't foresee that, fair enough. But we're left with an ageing Luke Ayling and Dyke Steele, who's probably not going to be here next season. We haven't really got a left-back option. Maybe Bangura could come back in. Borges, I think, is better at centre-half, so that's another position where the jury's out. You've got to replace Hayden Hackney. You've probably got to upgrade Dan Barlaser and maybe replace Johnny Howson. You need width out wide. I'm sick of inverted wingers. I do not want to see another inverted winger in my life. I want Boro to play with width. I want us to play with pace. I'm sick of players coming inside and slowing the game down and making it easy for the opposition. And I think we also need competition for Tommy Conway up front. Maybe another striker that brings a bit of pace. So they're the positions I think we need. But as I say, in terms of characters, we need some hardened, experienced championship pros who might not be pretty, but they'll help us get the job done and just give us that balance. And they're the players I'm not convinced Carrick will want in his team. And that's why I'm not convinced. I want him here to build another squad in another transfer window if we're just going to build version 3 of the same tippy-tappy team we've had for 2 years that essentially are just not consistent enough. So it's a big wish list. That's where we're at. Have you got anything to add in terms of the players, not just positional-wise that you want, but I guess the character of players that you want from this Boro team as well?
Yeah, I think on the hardened sort of leaders, I think Lenihan could potentially be that person if he can get fit. We don't know where he is with his fitness. We know Cat likes to put players on the bench, even if they haven't got a chance of coming on. So even though he's been on the bench, we don't quite know where he is in terms of fitness wise. But yeah, just looking at the defence, reliability is the most important thing for me there. If you remember, they go back to the Karanka team. I mean, we had George Fenn was 100 grand from Doncaster. We had Ben Gibson, academy lad, Ayala. I think later on he had a few injury problems, but I think the 2 years we did well under Karanka in the Championship. I think he was fit most weeks, and Emilio and Surrey. They're guys who would play 35, 36 plus matches. Some of them 40 plus. And I'm looking at the defenders now and thinking, how many of you are going to play 38, 40 matches? I think Rav van den Berg, probably not. Dale Fry, definitely not. Erling, no. Dijksteel, no. Bangura, no. Edmondson, if he plays 38, 40 games, then we will have problems then. Lenihan, we don't know. Borges, possibly. But there's not many people there who you can hang your hat on and say these guys are going to be fit week in, week out. So the most important thing for me is we address the problems at the back, and we do that by bringing in players who are reliable and have the right sort of personality traits that we require. Because we just lack that nastiness, lack that grit, and I think we just need an injection of that in the team. Like you said, in the wide areas, we desperately need pace. I'm sick of inverted wingers as well. Yep. Coventry was so frustrating that every time that we got forward and got into some really good, really nice positions, and you thought, go on, we just then sort of cut back, square. Pass, chances gone. We need some direct players in there who are quick and can get opposition. Like you said, competition for Conway. Is Josh Coburn that player, or is he not quite the Carrick style? I suspect he's not the Carrick style. So that might depend on who the manager is as to whether he's still here or not. Azaz, are we going to start playing Azaz back in the number 10 where he should be? I know Azaz has not done particularly great against the better teams in the league. His record against the top half and the bottom half pulls apart. But I think if we can get some pace around him, like when Ben Doak was available at the start of the season, he created a lot. He'd often take out two men, leaving a lot of space for Azaz, and Azaz hasn't had that luxury second half of the season. So obviously, if Hackney goes, which I mean, there's talk of Porto, isn't there? But I think he will go. I would like to see again some physicality introduced into the centre of the pitch. And I think if we go from there, I think we'll have a good foundation to build from. So that's the problem at the minute. We just don't have that foundation to build from. We're spending too much time on inverted wingers and attacking players minutes. Right, we need to start building from the back, which for me is the foundation. Because as numerous teams have proved now, if you don't concede goals, you only need to score one to win a football match. Whereas
it's a simple game.
That's it. Yeah. Whereas if you can score goals galore, but if you're conceding 2 or 3 goals every game, then it's a waste of time. So big summer ahead.
Yeah, the reliance on your attack there is ridiculous, isn't it? And you mention it. Yeah, we need a spine that's going to play most games throughout the season. A centre-back pair that's going to play most. I mean, we were quite lucky that Hackney and Morris played quite a lot of games together, but we need that consistent spine. You know, we go back to the Karanka team's the most obvious because it was the last time we were successful, but your Gibson and Ayala, you know, then your Clayton and your Leadbitter, your Gaston Ramirez, you know, your striker up front, whether it's Nugent or Stuani or whoever. That's what we've lacked. But then equally, you know, you talk about the number of injuries, that's also been a running theme under Michael Carrick. So is that another, you know, all roads lead to the head coach? Is there issues with the training methods? Is there issues with how the players are being trained, how they're recovering? Is that an issue with Carrick and his backroom staff? Because at the end of the day, again, we come back to it. It doesn't matter, or does it matter, how many players we sign and how good they are if they're not going to be fit because they're always getting injured? then what's the point? So is that another question that's going to be posed to maybe Carrick or his team as a whole? Why are we still getting so many injuries? Because it does not matter how good you are or how great the players that we sign. If we cannot get 35 games out of some of them, then it's a non-starter. So that's another question that, again, that's the thing I'm struggling with. All roads seem to lead back to Carrick for me, and that maybe that's just the way a football club works, and that's just an obvious thing to say. But yeah, I agree with you on the the players that we need, and does that come down to the training methods, etc. And I guess the final point, looking ahead, we've talked about what we want from the squad going forward, but what do we want management-wise? And I guess paired with that, to finish, what do you think will happen? What do you want to happen? But what do you actually think will happen? And where will we be come August when we start again?
I don't think want is the right word, perhaps, but I'm at the point now where if there was a change in manager, I would say, thanks for the memories, but I'm quite happy that we are going to see a change and see, something different. But if we did stick with him, it wouldn't be a case of, oh my God, I'm not going back to that ground until he's gone or anything like that. It'd just be a case of, right, okay, fine, but you've got a lot of work to do to win back that trust. Because at the minute, the faith bank is well and truly drained. I have zero faith that it's going to be any different next. Why would it be any different next season than the previous 2 seasons? I just haven't seen anything that strikes me as, okay, here's some straws, clutch onto those. There just isn't any. So if you ask me what I think will happen, I think that we will probably stick with him. I don't know why on earth. I mean, this might just be what the journals are saying about, the club are taking their time. They're going to have a review. I'm just thinking, why do you need a review? Surely you've been watching what's going on all season. You're behind the scenes. Surely you know what's going on. You know where the faults are. So why do you need to have a review? Shouldn't that's a continuous thing that's been going on since? Well, for me, the alarm bell's been ringing since January, but even if you say February, the Watford game, surely the alarm bells been ringing from then. So surely you've been doing your review, etc., from then on at least. So why is a review now? Other clubs are making moves, they're making their decisions, rightly or wrongly, about their manager. I honestly think Gibson will stick with him, and that will put Carrick in a tough situation, I think, because I think all that credit that he built up from previous seasons is well and truly gone now with the fans. When I was at Coventry, I did get to speak to quite a few people who are, well, if the fans who go away are your loyal fans. There was half and half, I'd say, booze and cheese when he came over at the end. And when I spoke to people afterwards, it's maybe 80-20. People just said, "Oh, no, time for change." So I think he's going to have it tough to get the fans back on side. It's not impossible. Fans, as we know, are fickle, and it will take 3-4 wins, and then people might start believing again. But this isn't like Karanka when we filled in the playoff final, and I know where it was like, well, we just narrowly missed out there. We'll go again. It's not the same. This is like, if we finished 7th and we were like a point off or something, that you can maybe make the argument. Oh, it's not it's not quite. Failure is a harsh word. It's not quite there. We just narrowly missed out, but to miss out how we did and finish 10th, total failure. So yeah, I think he is going to stick with him. I'm sort of 52-48 on that one. Nothing controversial has ever happened with that percentage. So yeah, that's where I am with that.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you on that. I am open to a change, as I say, because I've got no faith in this manager. I've not seen enough, as you say, to suggest that we're going forwards or that we will get to where we need to be, both with how we set up defensively, especially, but also the attacking, which, as we've said, is a myth unless we have the players that are good enough, which I don't think we will. I also don't have faith that maybe he wants to buy the players that I think we need, the characters we need that will get us there either. And I just feel like we need to think a little bit more cleverly, a little bit more methodically, and I don't think that'll come from this current setup. And as I've said, it's not a drastic style. It's just, I think, a natural evolution, of this team. It's not boot Carrick out because he's done a terrible job and he's awful and this, that, and the other. It's just a case of, right, let's draw a line here, take stock of where we are, the good stuff that have come from this era, and get someone in who will then add the layers on top of what we've got to take us to where we need to be. The in-game management, the proactivity on the touchline, the many things that we've alluded to that are weaknesses. And plus, I just don't feel any connection to this manager or the team. I don't.
It's funny you should say that. If I just stop you there, I noticed something at Coventry, and I raised this with a few people. And when's the last time you heard the fans chant Michael Carrick's name?
Good question.
When he first joined the club, obviously we've got Super Michael Carrick. It was the only song we seemed to sing. I can't remember the last time I've heard the fans sing his name. And when I raised this with someone, I could see the cogs turn in the head at Coventry, and they're like, no, I can't think of it either.
Yeah, good question. And I guess that leads me into my point about what I think will happen, because that's just my opinion. I'm ready for Boro to evolve and take that next step. But I also think he will stick with him. And there was a quote from a Gazette article that Craig Johns put out earlier. Although it is clear that no decision's been made as yet, so we can't really hang our flag to the mast either way as yet, and it could still go either way. But it very much sounds like sacking Carrick is the last resort right now. It is the final resort if all else doesn't work out behind the scenes with the decision making. As you mentioned, why is there a review? I think it's because there's indecisiveness behind the scenes. I think if they were all adamant and in agreement, a decision would be made right now, one way or the other. So I think there's clearly people at the club that want to keep him. There's probably people who want us to move on to someone else, and they're having to strike that balance. But I think the one person who does want to keep him is the one that matters, and that's Steve Gibson. Mm-hmm. The noises seem to be that he is desperate for Carrick to do well. He's desperate for it to work. He is desperate for stability, and he still believes that if we fix whatever issues they diagnose in the next review or next week or whatever it is, they have belief that if they fix them, we can still be successful under this manager. But I think regardless, I think the fans will have the final say anyway. And as I said, the scenes after the Norwich game were telling. The fans have checked out. They've lost belief. He has to win them back quickly, because if we don't start next season well, the floodgates will open big time, and the fans will... I mean, you're giving them a stick to beat Gibson with and Carrick with, because they'll just say, why didn't you sack him in the summer? Why have we bought all these players? It's not working. There is no leeway in the summer. We kept talking about room for error this season. There's no room for error at all to start with, because he has to get off to a flyer. Otherwise, the questions will arise instantly. The criticism will be there because he's got no credit in the bank, and things will turn badly if Boro don't start well. And we never start well, for starters.
Yeah.
So I think the pressure that this will put him under at the start of next season is huge. And that's why I sort of look at it and think, well, if the likely outcome is that we give him however much money to invest, we don't start well, Gibson's probably going to pull the trigger in October anyway, to which he's done many a time. And then we're getting another new manager in October, like we did Wilder, like we did Carrick, who've got to pick up a squad who, albeit, Boro operate in a way now where, we want consistency and continuity regardless of the manager. So it won't be as hard for the next manager to pick up Carrick's team as it would be if it was a Pulis team. But you're still having a manager likely coming in October and has to try and get things moving quickly, who has to pick up someone else's squad. I'd much rather, if a change is going to be made, do it now. And again, it's a bit like with the inevitability that I felt with Boro not making the playoffs. I feel like there's an inevitability that we're going to be looking in October at a new manager anyway. So I asked the question of what's the point? But Gibson seems adamant it's going to work. So I think he'll be here in August. But exactly like you, I'm going to be sat there in the Riverside on that first home game of the season with zero expectation, and I'm just going to be sat there saying, "Prove me wrong," because I'm going to expect nothing, and maybe that's a good thing because I can't be let down. But and they'll still probably find a way to let me down. But it will be a case of my investment's gone. You're going to have to prove me wrong and reel me back in. And whether I'll back him. I'll still back him if he's here, but he'll have to do a lot of work to really get me believing in this project again. And I feel like there'll be thousands of Boro fans who are in the same position, and you as well, I guess.
Yeah, it's quite similar as well that they've not released the numbers of the season ticket sales for this season. Very, very quiet on that. And I know, speaking to a lot of people, there's one guy I know who's been going 16 years. He's given up his ticket. He just says he hasn't enjoyed it for a few years now. A couple of lads I know got a ticket a few years ago. They've gave theirs up. There's a lot of people who I never thought would give up their season tickets who've given up the season tickets this season because it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to commit, and it's your time as well. And when you're just not getting the sort of results or the enjoyment from it, people just are going to vote with their feet, aren't they? And for me, I mean, I was at maybe it was a dozen away games last season. When you go to an away game, it's a bit different, isn't it? It's about the journey, about meeting your mates there or your family there if you go with them, or you're travelling on the bus or the train or in the car. You go into a new ground, new pub before the game. You see the go to a different stadium, and it's more about the day, and the football is just part of that day. But your home form is your bread and butter. The home form, you're going there and you're expecting a result and you're expecting to see some entertainment along the way. The home form last two seasons has been awful. For a team that should be aspiring to be in the playoffs, just not good enough. And it's the home form that often dictates the mood of the fans. And unless he can find a way to improve that home form, which, as we've highlighted already, has been mediocre at best the last two seasons, I think it's going to be very difficult to get the fans back on side. If you can improve the home form, and we're not great away, I think fans are always a little bit more forgiving. But the home form has got to be sorted out, because it's something that has just hampered him since that playoff season. It's just hampered him. There's been too many flat performances, too many times you've walked away from that stadium frustrated, and it does eventually wear people down. So for me, the key components next season are home form has got to improve. And like you've already said, we've got to start well, which I know we never do. I think it was Swansea this season, the first home game. Was that our first opening day winning in 10 years?
It was, yeah.
You've probably got to go and win the first 2 or 3 games this season to get people on side. So it's a big ask for me.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. So a quiet summer then, not much needed to happen. Should be a quiet one. Scott and Cork can put their feet up and enjoy a couple of cocktails in, I don't know, somewhere in
Marbella or somewhere.
Yeah, Marbella or, I don't know, Cancun or somewhere. But yeah, we'll be off for the summer as well. I'll still be making plenty of content here on the channel, of course, short form stuff on the championship and on Boro, and any big news that may happen. I mean, if there is a managerial change, we'll both be back on to discuss that, I'm sure. If not, then the next time we'll both be together. Likely we'll be looking into next season with some form of a big preview pods ready to go again.
Hopefully some optimism.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I say, we'd have to have a a summer transfer window out of this world to get me believing, because, you know, unless we change manager, I'm just sort of sat there saying, okay, prove me wrong. But if anything does happen, we'll be here to jump on it. We both expect probably nothing to happen, but stranger things have happened.
That probably means it will happen.
It will happen probably tomorrow after we've recorded and this whole podcast's void. To be fair, in his article, Craig Johns also did say that Carrick's future is likely to be determined on whether or not he feels comfortable with the solutions reached. So there might be, if the club are wanting to change fundamental ways that the club operates, whether it's giving Carrick less say on recruitment and saying, yep, we're not letting you sign Ryan Giles again or Kelechi Iheanacho, or whether they want to change his backroom team. If Carrick isn't happy with the changes that the club want to implement, maybe he might opt to leave, and that could be what happens. But the club are wanting to change things, and we'll see if there's a knock-on effect from that. But that's been it. So we'll be back to somehow gear up to go again and get the energy to do it all again in July, probably. But there will be other stuff coming on the channel, as I say. If you want to follow me and Chris on our own personal socials, we'll still be probably posting lots on there throughout the summer. Links to our X accounts and TikToks will be in the description below. And of course, next season, we'll be hoping to do this more on a monthly basis. Schedules have just sort of gotten in the way of certain things between when we started doing this mid-season to now. But anything left to say, Chris, other than a big thanks for jumping on and joining me numerous times this season? If you've got anything left to say before we sign off for the summer?
No, just always a pleasure, and hope everyone enjoys their summer holidays, and hope the Boro.
Yeah, up the Boro indeed. And as always, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. We do shorter versions of these Project Boro episodes when I review and preview every game, and of course these do go up on the podcast provider, so you can listen to these, which is definitely better for these long form videos and podcasts. And do obviously leave your comments below on everything we have discussed. But until next time, guys, enjoy your summer. Thanks for watching and listening. And as Chris said, up the Boro.